Hello, everybody. I'm saying that there are people from Latin America. We have from Brazil. We have from Peru, Italy, London, Ukraine. Well, that's not Latin America, but yeah, Brazil. Hello. I am so happy and very honored to be here with you in this very nice webinar. Something which is very important is, as he was saying, I've been a teacher training for many years, but I've been a teacher like for more than 40 years, but I am 22 years old from this century. So there are lots of things that I've been doing with the kids, right? Something that we have to understand is what is storytelling, okay? Every time that a person says that I am going to tell a story or I am going to read a book, because some people think that reading a book is telling a story or telling a story is not reading a book. So storytelling is an art, okay? It's not something that you just, like read and, spend time on the reading and that's it. But it's an art. And of course, it involves mental, social, and educational benefits for children. It's going to help our students with lots of things and I'm sure that you know this, but we will see how it goes, right? Okay. So the first thing that I want you to do is close your eyes. Of course, I'm not looking at you, but I know that you are going to do this. So close your eyes. And if you don't want to close your eyes, don't worry, because the screen is really nice. So you can see the pictures that are going to pop up. So close your eyes. And the first thing that I want you to do is think about your favorite story. As you can see, if you can see all around me, I have, my living room. Peter Pan came to my living room here. And so I wanted to, like to feel it, like a very storytelling living room, okay? So think about your favorite story. Then think about who read that story to you, okay? Was it your mom? Was it your dad? Was it your sister? Was it your nanny? Who was it? Your teacher? And the third question would be, where were you read to? Were you on your bed, very comfortably before going to sleep? Or were you in a very nice couch? Or were you under the tree, in a very nice park? So where was it? Okay, where was it? Were you read when you were a kid, or were you just listened to? Because you're very young, right? So I know that there are lots of stories on the mobiles and everything. And then now that you remember all this, tell me what memories were brought to you whenever you were thinking about your favorite story and people who read it to you. How did you feel? If you can just, just write it down and see if I can just read all of them or not just all of them. So what is it what memories, warm feelings, security, lots of colors, Christmas time. So this is joy, happiness. So this is something that all of it about home country. So imagine everything that all these memories were brought just to think about the place, the story, and the person you were with, okay? So this is exactly what we want to do with our students, right? And when I talk about little children, is very, very little children. And like 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. And something that is happening is that sometimes when we are English language teachers, and of course we're not native, we're native speakers like me. I am from Mexico, and it's not my native language. So sometimes it's very difficult for me it was very difficult for me to understand that how on earth can I write and I read a story to my students if they do not know lots of things about the language. Well, the language is very important, but something which is very, very important as well is the way that we tell the stories, okay? Look at everything that you're saying. Fantasy world, comfort, longing for the past, good feeling, all of those things happen when you are read to. So look, every time that somebody reads to us or tells us stories, imagination, and of course the imagination comes alive, right? So the adventures, and then the one that was reading the book might just be your dad, and suddenly he's the hero of the story, or it could be the villain. It all depends on the voice that he used and the way that he or she used those the story, right? So in here, we understand that every time that we read stories or we tell stories to our students, the imagination is going to come to them. We can actually teach values through all the stories that we can teach our students. Motivation, they are motivated because the kids, when they look at a book, and if they see lots of pictures, they go like, so they're interested, they're motivated. This incognita that there is like, what is this about, right? Emotional connections could be, like because of the story, the way that you're telling the story, and memories that will always live in your kid's life, okay? And of course, we love to tell stories, but what happens when we talk about teaching English through the stories, or, like inviting our students to fall in love with the language and fall in love with reading, okay? So we know that when we read stories, we are going to we're going to teach vocabulary. We're going to work with listening skills, speaking skills, comprehension, which is something which is very, very important in life, right? And reading readiness. Reading readiness, which is to get our young learners ready to read. But before they start, like looking at the letters and before looking at these different phonemes that are in English, of course, we have to work with lots of different skills before that. And if we put all of this together, then we're going to motivate our students to read, to become readers. And nowadays, it's very important for us to, get our students fall in love with a book, okay? It could be Kindle, but a book would be really, really nice. The way that they actually, like turn their pages. And this requires lots of abilities, okay? So let's talk about the important abilities to develop before actually reading, okay? Because remember, we're talking about the little kids, but it doesn't matter how old they are. What matters is the level of English of your students, okay? Because all of these activities are going to be for English language learners, for any other language to be taught, okay? So we can work with all these important skills while we expose our children to storytelling. Every time that we design a class for storytelling, it has to be a very well-prepared lesson. It's not just taking a book or putting on the screen very nice images and give the class to the students. It has to be very well prepared, okay? So let's talk about the important skills. Okay, the first one is visual discrimination. What is visual discrimination? It is the ability to recognize similarities and differences in objects, pictures, shapes, and later on, letters and words, okay? You know that there are letters that are more or less the same, for example, in our language would be the B and the D. So it all depends on where the little circle goes and where the little line goes, right? So first of all, before we can actually put emphasis on words and letters, then we have to, like start engaging our students to work with this visual discrimination skill, okay? If we have visual discrimination, now I have discriminated what I've seen. Now I must have a visual memory, okay? So what is it? It's the ability to remember letters, letter forms, and the words. This is when the kid is, like given a book, and then he's able to read letters and then little by little words. As you can remember, when you start reading with, like letter from letter. So it's like And then you listen to your teacher's voice or to your mommy's voice saying mama, okay? So little by little, the kids will be able to do it, okay? Then the third very important skill, auditory discrimination. And here, for all of us who are not native speakers, this is very important for us because when we read to English language learners, we tend to do it a little bit, exaggerated, like maybe focusing word for word to see whether the kids are actually understanding. We cannot do that because the language is not spoken like that. So auditory discrimination is the ability to discriminate between various sounds and to hear different sounds before they can associate a particular sound with a letter when in terms of reading, okay? But what happens in English? They have to start discriminating sounds, and then little by little, they will be understanding with the sounds and the gestures that we make, because you know that every single language teacher is usually very, we talk with our hands, okay? And we talk with our body because we want our students to understand. And if we don't want to translate, because translation is not that very good, what we do is we use our whole body to speak. And in this case, for example, in English, we have, for example, in Spanish, we have 26 letters in the alphabet, and we have 26 sounds. So the first sound is A, and A will always be A. B is always going to be B. But what happens in English? When you start, teaching the alphabet to the kids, and they start reading A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and of course we say A as in apple, B as in ball, E as in elephant. So for the kid is going like, what? So the first thing is that they have to start, like discriminating the sounds from words, and then little by little, one day at a time, they will be able to do it with the letters. And of course, some of the sounds would be, like, this is my name and this is my sound. My name is A and my sound is A, as in whatever the words are, right? So in this case, learning the sounds is much important and very important for our students to, start understanding, okay? And of course, if there is auditory discrimination, then we have to talk about auditory memory. Now that I discriminated the sound, now I discriminated the sound and the meaning, then I must have the ability to remember the sounds letters make so they can be reproduced and blended together to make words. And here, for example, if we talk about the way that you start teaching the very young ones, and I've always said this, it's like every time that you go into a class and you want your students to say hello to you, and when you go out, you want them to say goodbye, right? So how can you teach that? Just by doing it and just by practicing it and every single day. But what happens when another person comes into the class and they listen to a different pronunciation or a different voice, and that person says hello, and everybody goes like, what? Or when you say, hello, children, how are you today? And you expect, I don't know why, to get the answer, fine, thank you, and you? And then what happens? So it's very important for the teacher to understand that the students are used to listening to him or her, okay? So they're listening to this sound of the teacher, and the teacher is going to make everything possible. If another person comes, the coordinator, for example, I'm visiting lots of schools, and I then just go to the class and say, hi, hello, how are you? And then I don't say, hello, how are you today? They go just crazy. And the teacher just looks at me and says, no, they really know it. So tell her how you are, right? So these are these little skills that we have to work in with our students before actually doing anything with words and letters, okay? Next skill, and this, sorry, it's very, very important. Orientation. What is eye orientation? Well, our eyes must be trained to go from left to right and from the top to the bottom, okay? In Spanish and in English and in lots of languages, you have to get used to going from left to right and then from up to down, right? And in some languages, they go from right to left, okay? So something which is very important here is to work on our students' eyes and our students' eye muscles. Unfortunately, nowadays, most of our students don't have these exercises. They're not exercising their muscles of their eyes, right? Because all of the time they are in these little screens or tablets, another screen, or televisions, or the screen in the classroom. In this case, we have to train our eyes to go from left to right. And then when they start reading, they will be able to follow all the line instead of just, like skipping letters or skipping words, and sometimes even skipping lines. And sometimes we say, well, this kid doesn't know how to read. And maybe it's because their eyes are not ready and they just move a lot. So saccadic movements are very, very important for us to start, like working with our students' eyes in order for them to be, to have very, like strong eye muscles, right? And last but definitely not least, the perceptual motor skills, okay? Eye-hand coordination to track words and a line of point with our eyes. And of course, if we work on saccadic movements and pursuits, which is all the eye tracking, we're going to get our students, like in a good way to be able to follow, a line without skipping letters or words, as I said. They also need motor skills to write letters and words afterwards. And when they are very little, they even need this perceptual motor skill to turn up the pages, because they are not able to do it on their own. It's very difficult for a little kid. If you see all the baby's books, they are very thick, and maybe they are, made of plastic, and they are made of, like a little, like cardboard. And then it's very difficult for them to go from page to page. So all of these skills have to be worked, okay, before actually getting our students to read and write. And if we work this in our classes, when we give our students a story to enjoy, then we can help our students to go beyond, okay? So let's see. The first thing, everything that we do today here is, I'm going to tell, as Maria Montessori said, every activity designed by a teacher must have an intelligent purpose behind it, okay? Because otherwise it would be just a fun activity without any purpose whatsoever, okay? So if we're talking about auditory memory, auditory awareness, and if we're talking about visual, and we're talking about memory and visual discrimination, then why not having these type of exercises with our kids? Okay, what can you see? You see 3 triangles, right? Okay, so in this case, every triangle, it will have one move, okay? So what I do is, I just tell my students to show me their finger, their index finger, and they say, okay, now, follow the rhythm and go like this. Da, da, da. There are 3 triangles. Every triangle will be 1 beat, okay? So da, da, da. We can say na, 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 whatever. If you're trying to start with phonics, that would be really cool. Not putting the letter just yet, but maybe if you are, like with phonics, you go like this. P, 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 right? So it all depends on what sound you want to do, okay? Very good. Now, look, now we have squares, okay? Now, the squares is 2 beats, okay? This square is 2 beats. So we have to go like this. Na, 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 na. Ready? I hope that you're doing it at home. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Na, 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 na. Stop. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Let's start with a triangle. 1, 2, 3. Na, 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 and then na, 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 na. Very good. Okay, now think about what other exercises can be done. Here we're involving our ears, we are involving our eyes, and then the kids are able to, like with their little fingers, they are going to start, like imitating you. It's a little bit difficult for the very little ones. Maybe instead of just with one finger, 2 fingers, maybe you can give them, like a drum, and they can do it just the beat with a drum, or with their feet. It all depends on what you want to do. Remember, your class is not going to be very quiet, but the kids are going to be working on these specific skills, okay? And now what about these rectangles? Now we're going to have 3 taps, okay? With our 3 fingers, with your drum, whatever. Ready? So, na, 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 na. What happens is that now, if you tell them, for example, the color red, yellow, green. There's a question that I want to answer right now. But do very young children need this? Of course, because what we're doing is we're actually teaching them how to decode a meaning with that. And this is like TPR, as you were saying. Something here is that maybe with the very little ones, we're going to start just with the triangles, and then just 1, 1, 1, so that when they are very good at it, because they have to follow rhythm, stress, and this is something that we're going to work then with intonation. You will see. Okay, now that they already have this, maybe you say, okay, ready, red, and they just go like na, na, na. What about green? And then na, 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 na. And then what you're doing is you're asking them to pay attention to a visual cue. Then they will have to decode it, and then they will do it with the rhythm that you want. Why am I using these shapes? It's just for the kids to just look at it, and of course they are what we do is we choose the colors that they are working with. So it's better for them if you can have the rhythm, if you can have the notes with like rhythmic reading. That would be really cool. Okay, so those would be the beats. Now what about this? Now it's a little bit difficult, right? So let's see if you can do it. The triangle is how many beats? 1, very good. 2 many beats? The number, the yellow one, the square, very good. And the other one, the green one? 3, perfect. Oh, you're paying attention. I'm so happy. So are you ready? So let's start. Da, 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 da. Ooh, perfect. Very simple for us, not very simple for your students. You have to be very patient, and you have to be very constant on doing this. Ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3, and da, 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 da. Okay, now look at it. Now what's happening? Now we have big ones and small ones. What would you do to make a difference between the same beats, but what would be the difference here? And what would be the skill that we're working? Exactly, loud, volume, quiet. Okay, so the big ones would go very, very high, and of course the kids love it. And the teachers next door, they don't, but we're teaching skills. And then what happens is like exactly small ones more quietly. So imagine if you have all of this here you have the very big ones, then middle-sized, and then little-sized, and then until they just go like this. So this is something that our students are going to start. Our students are going to start, like decoding, remembering, and actually doing, okay? And then we can go a little bit further. But I'm going to mix these examples with our topic, okay? So what would be the steps to start storytelling, okay? The first one is we have to create a friendly atmosphere, okay? Here, it is very interesting that when you were thinking about the stories that you were read to, you were thinking about the place, and the place was, maybe it was cozy. When I was preparing this talk and I was talking to my 20-year-old girl, she said, I said, do you remember, what other place do you remember, you know, the stories? And I said, and she says, the car. I remember that you told us about the Miserables, imagine, in the car. And then we listened to the music, and then little by little they were able to, you know, like get the names of the characters and everything, right? So a car could be as well. So create a friendly atmosphere. It could be, you know, with cushions and on the floor, whatever your personality, you know, like gives you the chance, right? The second part is introduce the characters. But how are we going to introduce the characters? Let's see. Here we have one little girl. Who do you think she is? What would be her name? Maybe if you can just start guessing. I'm going to just show you another person. Jane, Kate, Mary, Monica, Goldilocks, Fatima, very good. She is Goldilocks, okay, very good. So we're going to tell the story about Goldilocks. So look, you're saying Wendy because of Peter Pan, huh? Well, so Goldilocks. So let's see, I'm going to introduce the character, but I want to enhance the skills that we've been talking about, okay? So look, who is she? That would be the answer, the question that the teacher does whenever, you know, like that you say, who is she, right? Maybe on a screen or on a piece of paper, right? And you are going to get lots of answers. You, Marian, Monica, whatever. So you're like, no, no, no. And of course, to see whether they actually, you know, maybe they already know the story. Maybe you can say, look, a friend. Okay, and then you go like, look, another friend. Or maybe they're not that friendly, but anyway. So, and then until they tell you, you know, like Goldilocks, okay? So in this case, you go, okay, Goldilocks, who is she? Goldilocks, Goldilocks. She is Goldilocks, everybody. Goldilocks, Goldilocks. She is Goldilocks. She is Goldilocks, okay? Now, what am I doing? What I'm doing, for example, in Mexico, we have lots of trouble with two sounds. The first one is the SH sound and the TH sound, okay? In Mexico, for our students to say thank you, it's so difficult. They usually say thank you, or thank you. It doesn't happen here in Spain because of the TH sound that they produce every time that they speak, right? So it's thank you. And what about the SH? In Mexico, sometimes they say ch, and it's not chi is Goldilocks, okay? Chi is Goldilocks? No. So in this case, that's why I'm making this TPR movement, this gesture, so that they remember. And they have a visual cue, so they will remember my visual cue. Like, who is she? She is Goldilocks. She is Goldilocks. Very good. Now, what about this? Who is he? And then, of course, maybe they will say, and say, aha, look, he is Baby Bear. He is Baby Bear. So that they have he and she. And it's easier for them to go with he is Baby Bear, she is Goldilocks, okay? So as you can see, instead of say, okay, look, Goldilocks, okay, repeat, Goldilocks, Goldilocks, very difficult word, very difficult. Baby Bear is very easy, but Goldilocks, really, it's very difficult for the kids to say. If they don't say it correctly, don't worry, as long as they follow the she is gold. And then maybe you can start, like Goldilocks, Goldilocks, she is Goldilocks, baby bear, he is baby bear. By the time you say, who is she? Of course, our kids are going to go like, she is, and they say, Mama also, very good. Mommy bear, she is mommy bear. So we introduce the characters, okay? And of course, it's going to do a little, like story for the kids, trying to enhance their visual skills, their auditory discrimination, auditory and visual discrimination, visual memory. Okay, so all of these techniques that we can actually start with our students, so to get someday reading. Okay, then afterwards, then we're going to put this thing together. Okay, in this case, now they already know 1 tap, 2 taps, 3 taps. So imagine all the memory that they must have. Okay, they must have the memory of the triangle, which is 1, the square, which is 2, and the rectangles, which is 3. Okay, now what about the circle? Okay, so the circle here is what? Maybe you can tell me which is maybe 4, or just snap whatever you like. Okay, and then again they would have to go like this. Goldilocks, and the square would be Daddy Bear, and Mommy Bear would be Mommy Bear. Okay, and little by little they will be able to remember all of these exercises. Now, when we talk about eye tracking, which is a very important skill to highlight in before reading, and of course when you are an adult as well, I've taught little kids, big kids, adults, teachers, and what happens here is that sometimes we forget about these skills to keep on working with our students, and this is just reading skills, saccadic movements. Eye tracking is when our eyes have to be, for example, saccades or saccadic movements. It's when our eyes go from left to right, up and down, without your head moving. Okay, so imagine this on your board, and then they will have to see this on the board, and all the kids sitting down in front of the board. Okay, and then you say, okay, everybody put your pencil cases on your head. Okay, because I don't want you to move your head. And the only thing that I want you to do is go from the very left to the very right. Okay, so you will have to say Goldilocks, Mommy Bear, Daddy Bear, Baby Bear, and the eyes will be moving from left to right, and then you go to the next to the following line: Baby Bear, Goldilocks, Mommy Bear, and Daddy Bear. Okay, so in this case, what we're doing is we're doing all of the abilities that they have to, like, to work with whenever they are going to be ready to read. Okay, but we're using this, before the story is told, so that they get together they start knowing the characters, and they are able to, play with it. Okay, so far so good. I've seen that some of you teach teenagers. Well, this is very, this is specific for the very little ones. Okay, so what happens here is that it happens everything about the skills. Okay, so this is something that we have to bear in mind every time that we're going to prepare a storytelling theme. Okay, so next step, present the vocabulary, because if you are going to tell a story for the little kids, they must know vocabulary. So the teacher is going to choose what vocabulary you would teach, right? I would teach, obviously, the porridge, the bowl with the porridge. Then we have the bed, and then we have the chairs, the big chair and the medium-sized chair and the little chair. Okay. After presenting, and of course you can do it as long as you like. Okay, it is very important for us to remember that our kids are going to, like get the sound of it and then the word. So when sound and words are together, both sides of the brain are working, right? And the corpus callosum in the middle goes like, yeah, this goes like this goes like that, okay? And they can go from left to right really, really happy, okay? So let's go back to the steps. Present the vocabulary, and then, of course, read the story, and then finally, act it out, okay? So if we pre-teach vocabulary, it is very nice for the students to just look at the page and say, oh, I know what this is, right? So act out the story. Something that is very important for us is to engage our students, okay? For example, the very little ones, they really like to take part in everything, okay? So if you say, who wants to, and then they are raising their hands. They don't even know what you want, but they raise their hands and they really want to be in the activity. So what you could do is you say, okay, very good. So I want you to, who wants to be Goldilocks? Okay, so Goldilocks. Who wants to be Mommy Bear? Who wants to be Daddy Bear? Who wants to be Baby Bear, right? So you divide your class into different characters, okay? And then you say, every time you hear the word Goldilocks, you're going to, let's practice movement for Goldilocks. So maybe they can just go like this, or they invent their own movement, okay? So every time you say, baby bear, how would you say baby bear? Like this if they want, as they want. So in this very moment, the kids are going to be engaged, okay? And little by little, they will be able to do it like that, okay? So we have our Goldilocks, which is the most important person in the story, okay? And let me just read the story and act it out. Okay, so let's start with the story, okay? So what is the name of the story? And then, of course, the kids will say nothing. Maybe they will say, if they already know the story, they will say it in their own language. And that's really nice, because when they answer back in their own language, is because they're engaged and they do not know how to say that in English. And even though we say it in English, I'm sure that you can do it. Well, it's better to invite them and so that they feel comfortable with their participation, okay? So in this case, you say, okay, so who remembers this girl? Goldilocks, very good. And what's that? Who remembers these guys? Very good. So it's Goldilocks and the three bears, very good. And then the teacher starts reading the book, okay? And then sometimes we want, like once upon a time, the kids are not reading. So what we want our students to listen is to the rhythm of the sentence, okay? So once upon a time lived Goldilocks. Where are my Goldilocks? Very good. And the three bears. And then they have to do it, okay? And then the kids, start moving, okay? And maybe you can ask questions to the kids. Okay, where are they? Look at the house and look, where are they in a garden? Are they in a patio? Are they? And then little by little, you say, okay, the forest. That's another word that you have to give them because they live in the forest, right? Okay, so once upon a time lived Goldilocks and the three bears. One day, Goldilocks, and then the kids go like this and then you don't stop the story, because otherwise it takes a long time. And the second part would be for them to act it out, okay? So one day, Goldilocks went for a walk in the forest and found a house. She knocked at the door, but nobody answered. Goldilocks decided to go inside. In the house, she saw 3 bowls of porridge on the table. Goldilocks was hungry. So little by little, as you can see, they will start listening to the story. I'm not going to tell you the whole story because otherwise it's going to take a long time. But what I've been doing is while I am reading, I am moving, okay? Because if we just say in the house, she saw 3 bowls of porridge on the table. Goldilocks was hungry. And then it's not, like it's not something that, like they could understand. And you have to be very, very, like exaggerated in your movements, okay? She tasted, and here this is really cool because the kids will have to, the Goldilocks will have to make the same face that they are looking here. She tasted the porridge from the blue bowl. This porridge is too salty, she said. And then the kids, without you just, like pausing the reading, okay? She tasted the porridge from the yellow bowl, and then they have to make exactly the same face, etc., etc. And then when we come here, it would say she tasted the porridge from the red bowl. This porridge is just right. And then what happens here is you can actually start, like teaching these little expressions that you will use every time that you make another activity. Just right. The porridge is just right. And then little by little, you start, start making all these movements, okay? And then what happens? Then, she starts going with on the chairs, and she sits down on the chair, the blue chair, the pink chair, the yellow chair. And then, of course, she's very tired. And then she goes to the beds and blah, blah, blah. And then everything is going to be, like very pictorial, right? So the kids are going to be looking at the pictures and with you, doing everything that Goldilocks do. And of course, the Goldilocks are going to be very happy with that, okay? And then as she was sleeping, the 3 bears came home. And then what happened? So, and now it is time for the bears to start, saying, like being the stars of the show, okay? And then, of course, imagine all the daddy bears in your class, they're going to start, like going, they're going to reflect these very angry kids, angry daddy bears, etc., okay? So daddy bear, mommy bear, daddy bear baby bear who's going to be crying. And then again, now look at the language. Someone's been sitting in my chair and it's broken, cried baby bear. Very difficult language. But what happens here is that we are using it in a very functional and natural way. Because if we just stick to what our students know, there will be, there will be very, very important lessons because we will be working with the words and how they read the words. But in this case, you want your students to, even though they're not understanding every single word, they will be able to catch it as long as you show it to them, okay? So then it happens, and then of course everything was, horribly, and everybody was, like very angry because now she's sleeping in the bed and so on. After doing this, of course, she ran away and then she never went back again to the woods. When we talk about like playing the story now, is once they already know what the story is about, then you say, okay, now let's see if we can do it as in a theater, okay? So you're going to be Goldilocks, you're going to be daddy da da da. Then you start to give them not the whole story. So one group can be, the first part with the porridge. The other one would be the bed, and the other one would be the chair. So as you can see, reading a story is not just 15 minutes activity. It is an activity that it will take the nice time that you dedicate and you invest in, engaging your students to love what they are actually doing. Because we have to understand that, and of course, and we have to understand that now our students are, not very fond of reading. So why is it that I've been doing all these, like with the rhythms and the TPR and movements and the tonality and the tempo? Well, studies have shown that learning memory, I mean, when memory is linked to beats and rhythm, it increases the ability to learn. Okay, so this is something which is very important for us to remember when we are teaching a second language. The music of English language is not the same as our native language. Okay, for example, in people from Chile, my very favorite country in South America, it's when I go there, I love the way that they speak. Okay, because they it's like here in Andalusia, they don't have this. Sometimes they eat the s's, right? So it's instead of saying gracias, they say gracias, and then of course the s at the end doesn't exist. In Chile, when they speak, they say fantástico, but when they speak in English, they wouldn't say fantastic. What is it? Is it a cat? Of course not, because that's not the music of the language, right? Or even when you have a different, so this is something which is important for us to remember and to work with. And we have to to think about our generations. I've been a teacher for more than 40 years, and I've seen the change of generations and change of our children and change in the teachers, okay? And of course the methodologies that we're using. So we know that our children are born into a media, soaked environment. Everything is on a screen. Everything is, on a, everything, they do it, they are not having fun and they just slide it, and then their concentration span goes away, right? So they have lots of this. They have tablets, they have smartphones, streaming platforms, they have apps that engage our children in entertainment. So please don't forget about storytelling. Don't forget about the quality time that we can spend with our students. Storytelling is spending quality time with our students. It is a way to bond with them and to teach them much more than English. Okay, so I'm really, really honored to have been here with you, and I want to thank you for being here and listening to me. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Miriam. I mean, there's an outpouring of thanks and love there going on in the chat box.
Oh, thank you.
That we can keep up with. So I don't even need to tell you how much people enjoyed it and how fantastic the content of that webinar and how useful it is for teachers to be thinking about using stories in this more holistic method, I guess, this more holistic way, seeing it as more than just a kind of vessel for introducing vocabulary or, presenting a grammar point, which I think, traditional course books, you go back, 10, 20 years, that's what kind of the reading was for. It's okay, it's got a purpose. Quite often it was not related to the rest of the units. So I'm glad that we're using stories in this more kind of holistic way and giving students, language in context. Like you said, so many interesting things going on. There was a few good questions that came up, so let's pick some of them out. I mean, somebody mentioned that they love the slides. The slides are beautiful, by the way. It's one of the
thank you. Thank you.
most attractive webinars I think I've seen.
Thank you very much.
And I really like the way that you really brought in this kind of emotive aspect that we tried to bring up at the very beginning of the webinar. The idea that stories carry meaning, they carry emotions, they carry feelings, not just within the content of the story, but our association to that story, where we were, who we were with. I think these are really important things that children will remember more than, okay, we did a story and here's a worksheet. Can you flip all these, flip all these sentences into a different tense, these kinds of activities that we do a lot. They will remember, like, oh yeah, remember how animated a particular teacher was, or this. I really loved the last slide talking about bonding, and talking about that relationship aspect within the classroom, and that stories can really help us to get to know our students, because we can get their ideas out, we can get, what they're interested in out of them, because they can change the story, they can manipulate the characters, they can manipulate the settings. So all of these different types of things that students can do, which helps them see the language in completely different ways.
Exactly.
So let's look at some of these questions. Someone's put about, we know that teachers now are using technology more, certainly post-pandemic. People are using things like animated stories as well as the ones from the books. Someone's put, do all the stories need to be interactive using them on a whiteboard? Is that what you do with every story now? Or do you still use, I remember when I was teaching nursery, there wasn't many animated stories. It was all kind of big books. Is there a difference between the presentation of a big book and an animated story? Would you use both? Would you use them in different scenarios?
Well, the first thing that I would do is, it all depends on the size of your student, of your class, because sometimes we have lots of students, and with one little book, they won't be able to see the pages as you really want them to see it. So if you have a screen and then you're able to put this on a screen, that would be really nice for them to start, like looking at the whole picture, and you can actually, with just one click of your finger, you can actually see all of them doing, the actions, and then the faces and everything. But what happens here is that we have to understand that there are some kids who are not very, some kids might not just want to see the screen. So maybe we have the same book on the screen, and in real life, you can give that book to a group of children. Maybe sometimes we have little children who are, very kinesthetic. Instead of telling them that they're hyperactive, some of them, they are very kinesthetic, and they are going to start, looking at the book. They usually want to rush over the book, and some teachers would say, no, 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 don't do that. Stay. Don't, let them do that. It's the wonder of what's going on. Some people want to see the ending before the actual books start. So in that way, you can actually start getting to know your students. There are some students that they are with the book and they just say, no, no, we're on this page. And then, so we can do both. I am more in favor of big books, okay? The big books are really nice, because what they do is they can actually feel the way that they can open the book, and then you can have two kids who are, the guardians of the book. So the two kids, and one kid is going to turn on the page. So it all depends on what kind of books you have, and if you have these screens, that would be nice.
Yeah, and I think it's really nice to use both, right? Introducing the book and looking at the story. This idea of flipping the page is really important for them to see that, because you're role modeling to them, how to read a book, to flip pages,
Exactly.
and the joy of reading paper books. But then I think, to help them perhaps visualize the story in a different way, this is differentiation, right? You're showing them it in a variety of modes. Yeah, it's kind of this idea of modal presentation. So they see it as a kind of as a something in a static book, but they see it as something that's animated as well. They get both, so they can kind of differentiate between the two. And I guess it's this idea of reinforcing. I think that towards the beginning, you were saying about this importance of both discrimination and memory, and actually made me think of a story. I remember teaching in a special educational needs school in the UK, and I remember sitting with this boy. It was right when I first started. I was in my training, and he was probably about 2.5. He was very, very young, because they started very young in that school. And I remember I was looking with him at a bus, and we were looking at a bus in a storybook. And then I remember the school buses coming in at the end. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, I don't know. Like, he had no association that one is the same as the other. And this is what we're trying to help them. This is this discrimination part, right? It's helping them to see that what they're seeing in the classroom exists outside of the classroom, that it's a word. It's a word that we hear. It's a word that we see, that it's made up of letters. We put them together. They see it outside. Okay, and now I start to see when we make a pretend bus in the classroom using chairs or blocks, this idea of role playing, it helps them to visualize that language in lots of different ways. And then they will say, okay, it's not just this word that I have to learn. It means something, and it means something in different contexts. So the story really helps them to visualize all of that stuff, which I love.
And it's not them. They are actually, like pretending to be another person. So it's really, for the shy students, it's really nice because I pretend to be that girl. It's not me, right?
Yes, exactly. And I was really thinking of that when you were talking about the Goldilocks story, and we say role play, and I think in an English language classroom, role play is usually, you stand up and you say the lines of the character who's supposed to be speaking. But I think role play can go so much further than that.
Yeah.
There could be 10 children could just be the forest, and they have to stand like trees. And then 2 could be like this as a house, and they have to go inside and get them all involved and get them changing,
So
whose characters.
imagine everything that you're saying, Nathan, and of course, one class of one story gives you for many things to do with many activities to, if you think about them. I mean, just like pretending to be another one, to care for other ones, and then if you want to talk about saying like, what do you think that did Goldilocks? I mean, was she a very nice person to enter in a house that wasn't hers? So it's little by little, you can do lots of activities from there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and I guess I'm going to say something else because I want to mention something that somebody said in the chat, but the role playing doesn't have to be saying something. There's a lot of learning within body language and
Exactly.
acting out, being part of that group. That's what theater is about, right? It's playing a role, and your part, learning how to take turns, empathy skills that you've just mentioned. There's loads of stuff. And actually somebody on the Facebook chat, because I was watching that as well, they told a wonderful kind of reenactment of things that they were doing. They dressed up as Merlin, the wizard, and they got their students doing all sorts of what sounds like amazing activities. And it made me think of our new Advancing Futures program, because they were talking about this idea of building understanding of taking care of animals, empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of an animal. How would you feel if you were one of the bears? How would you feel if you were the wolf? All of these types of great life skills and additional skills that the students can learn. That this is what you're saying, right? It's going beyond the story, beyond the language. It's making them feel something. I think, and that's really nice.
And
So
something
I love
that I would like to something that I want to include is what happens when you have kids in your class that are deaf or that they are blind. So how is it that you can involve these kids? And I had something that happened to me, and it was like, how would you tell the story to a person who doesn't hear? So it's like the kids will have to act it out, and it's really nice. And kids, they have lots and lots of imagination, and they can do, as you were saying, I am a tree, and now the wind is blowing. So it goes beyond.
Yeah. And that school that I worked in, or that I trained in, was fantastic for that. It was a full SEN school, and they had kids of every known ability. Yeah, it was amazing. Kids in wheelchairs, acting out stories. Even if they can't move, they could be doing different things, and just them associating and laughing and being a part of that kind of group was, is a really great thing. And I would definitely recommend to all of the teachers who are listening to really get the kids involved, get them up. So I'm gonna ask one more question, because I know we've kind of gone over time a little bit, and I could talk about this stuff forever. I want to talk about teachers' confidence. Let's move away from the kind of topic, because I think some teachers want to do it, but they perhaps don't feel that comfortable reading to students or acting out stories, or they're just not that kind of personality where they think, I'm just not that animated as a teacher. I kind of, I want to be kind of factual, or I want to teach in a particular type of way. Have you got any advice to help people be a little bit more confident? Is it just practice?
It's just practice, and something you won't. I think that you won't believe me, but I was very shy when I was a teenager. I was very shy when I was a young adult. Now that I'm old, I forgot about the shyness, but I was very shy. But whenever I was in my classroom with my students, it was a whole new world for me. So just, like make your students your allies, and then you are going to, like grow with them, because as a teacher you have to be, like you have to be very open. And of course, it all depends on your personality. I am like this in my class or outside the class, but it is important for you to, like to loosen it up a little bit. And what I did was, because when we're not native speakers, it's very difficult for us to, be in front of a class and then starting to speak all the time in English is very difficult. So what I did was, I was in front of the mirror, and because I didn't have these little things now that I could record yourself, but I was in front of the mirror, looking at my faces and doing the things that I was going to do with my kids. And the first time that I gave a seminar, and the first time that I presented my book, it was like it was something that yeah. So it's something that you have to work on. We teachers are always, students are as well, because we're always learning different things, always.
Yeah, and I guess thinking about it, if a teacher is perhaps not that confident in terms of reading out to the class or getting them involved, is to perhaps, I've recommended this before, is to use things like puppets. So take the emphasis off yourself.
Ooh, beautiful.
And put the focus for the students onto something that's a bit more easy for them to associate with, because there is a power dynamic, I think, between teacher and student. They see you as in a particular type of role. So yeah, or if you don't have puppets, get them to make them, get them to, even if they're, again, not language, get them to just be playful with it, I guess, and then see where that goes, and build that confidence over time.
Exactly.
I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, really. Okay, and the last one, if you don't mind, go on. You want to say something?
No, because I was looking at one of the questions that I think it was important about if you divide this into lessons, and
that's,
of course,
that was literally gonna be my last question. Is that I think, again, course books have been fallen foul of this in the past. Is a story is in one lesson, that's it, because it's connected to a particular part of the language. So we go, okay, it's story day today, and then that's it. We never see that story again. Now, I know in a kind of literacy based learning environment, certainly when I went to preschool or early primary school, stories kind of spanned whole semesters, really. We had themes around them. Would you recommend teachers to do that, to break it up, or I don't know, any advice around using stories, I guess, over longer periods of time?
What I would suggest is that if you choose a story that suits your students, they will ask you to read it again and again. Remember that we're talking about the very young. So don't forget about that story, and that story can last for, as you were saying, maybe weeks or maybe months, because they're going to ask you once again if they can listen to it again. And something that when they are stories from the course book, then they are stories that were very they were good thought, right? So it's important to just go back to the stories. A story will be as interesting as the story is told. If the story is just read, then it's going to be just for one day and next topic. So it is important for you to, and as a teacher, you have to engage with what you're teaching and what you want your students to learn, because sometimes we think about what is it that I'm teaching, and not is it that what do I want my students to learn about from this topic and from this content. So after now knowing what I want my students to learn, then you can do whatever suits your students.
Yeah, I'm going to take that quote. A story is only as good as the person who tells it. I like that one. And yeah, I think I guess treat stories the same way that you would treat songs and chants, because we know that they ask for those chants and songs over and over again. And for them, the point of that, from their little psychological point of view, they need that repetition. They need that recycling over and over again. Even if we've moved the unit onto a different topic, it's still recycling some of that old language. And I think looking at the content that you were presenting, you know, with the triangles and the squares and the rectangles, it's taking what they already know, colors, shapes, sizes, and then using that to attach new things that we want them to learn. And I guess this is the whole kind of Vygotsky thing, right? It's all that ZPD and, you know, take what they know and then build on top of that bit by bit. And you've got to keep going back. You can't just introduce something once and then hope that they're going to remember that. They're small. They need to do repetition over and over again of this language and these concepts. So yeah, I love all this kind of stuff. Miriam, thank you so much. I know you have another one. Thank you for answering our questions and getting into a real kind of in-depth discussion about, you know, teaching.
I'm just delighted to listen to you and then to read all these questions.
There's so many like fantastic comments and questions. People were talking about TPR and they were talking about all sorts of different things. We could go into all sorts of different directions, but I'm going to let you rest because I know you're doing this again later.
Thank you.
And it's going to be very. So everybody, if you can just stick around for 2 more minutes, let me share my screen. Thank you, Miriam, and we'll look forward to seeing you this evening. I know that a lot of people were really interested in teaching teens, and perhaps storytelling in the teen classroom is something we can look at in the future. But today we were looking at it in relation to very young learners. We're looking at the pre-primary or kindergarten class today. And because this webinar was associated with Doodletown 2nd edition, it's a new course book. It's an old course book, Doodletown, but we've got a new edition of it, very new and updated. So we've been talking a lot of things now today around stories, narrative conventions. We've been talking about, what else have we been talking about? Rhythms. We've been talking about sounds, intonations, making stories relevant and natural for students, but also seeing that more holistically. So teaching them things like positive attitudes and values. We can have global citizenship in there. When we were looking at that story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears, for example, you know, like we could bring all sorts of global citizenship, education, and values, cultures, all these types of conversations, helping students to understand the content, bringing in CLIL, lots of things that they can do. We looked at visuals, mimes, songs, gestures, voices, helping students to think about the discovery and construction of meaning within a story. So Doodletown 2nd edition is packed full of stories and songs. You do have those animated videos, so you can do lots of different ways of presenting the content. You've got all the stories with lovable characters so that students, you know, are engaged. And you also can help, we can also help you build that homeschool connection, because we have these little rip-out readers as part of Doodletown 2nd edition that you can find in the literacy skills pack. And there's a digital students book so you can present in class. And students can practice these kind of story-based lessons at home with their parents as well. The idea is we want to promote the habit of early reading and early reading skills. And if we can do that, we will reinforce vocabulary and grammar retention. So loads of great reasons to explore Doodletown.